I'm not sure if, there it is, now I hear it. How many of you are barely hanging on since last night, huh? Tell the truth. You need to be serving coffee in here so you guys can kind of get your feet out underneath you again. Excited to talk to you today about this concept that we are building out right now in this space, and why I think it is so important that blockchain and crypto become the new frontier for independent journalism, something I believed for a long time, something that had I told you this maybe a year ago, you might be open to it, but I couldn't make the kind of case that I'm going to make for it today because so many things have changed. Let me start here. My story, if you don't know who I am, my name is Ben Swann. I'm a broadcast journalist, 20 years. I've worked for Fox TV stations, CBS, NBC, a couple Emmy Awards, a few Edward R. Murrow Awards. I've spent my entire career as a broadcaster in front of the camera. And I worked essentially for a lot of years just in the business of being a broadcast journalist. What does that actually mean? It doesn't necessarily mean anything positive. It was just a career choice, a career path, a way to make money for a long time. And then at a certain point in my career, about 10 years ago or so, I had an epiphany when I was working on the US-Mexico border covering the drug war, that there was in fact a bias in media, not a left-right bias, which so many people claim that there is. I don't think that's actually true. But there was a bias in media toward or away from truth and toward a shaped and assumed narrative. And I began to see that early on in my career. And then I went to Ohio and I really got into covering politics in Ohio. It is the swing state of swing states, and began to cover the ugliness of what that looked like, and really had deeper epiphanies as to what was happening in terms of the strange alliance between political systems and media and corporations that own those media entities, and the information that you hear and that you are allowed to hear, and began to see all of that kind of taking shape. And so I spent a lot of years kind of developing a brand that was meant to buck the system. I created a series called Reality Check with Ben Swann. Some of you may have seen it before. If you have, when we were on doing this early on, we started to really grow on YouTube and saw people all over the world watching our segments out of Ohio. And then I moved to Atlanta and worked on it from there. And we saw incredible success. When we went to Atlanta and we began to post our videos on Facebook, we were beating, with this one segment, we were beating the entities like Vice News in terms of reach and engagement and views and people watching our content, simply because we don't believe in that left-right paradigm. We don't believe that the world breaks down into people on essentially two sides. That is a myth. That's a lie that's being forced on you, right? What we realized was that there was liberty and there was freedom, and then there was oppression. And there's a whole lot of oppression that is forced on you through our media. So we began to do this. And if you don't, again, I can't give you the whole story because I only have about 15 minutes here, but I will tell you this. If you want to learn more, you can go and check out my website, truthinmedia.com, and you can also find my videos all over the internet to see the kinds of things that we talk about. But what's significant is I have always found that throughout my process as a broadcaster, no matter how successful I've been, and I've been very successful in that space, no matter how successful, I have run into walls over and over and over because of corporate sponsorships of media and because of media bosses who refuse to let me talk about certain issues, who will shut down certain discussions, or who will shut down certain stories because it does not fit with what they are allowed to talk about. There's a whole series of levels we could go to in discussing that. Suffice to say, in the beginning of last year, in the beginning of 2018, I left my position with CBS in Atlanta and instead moved completely into independent media thanks to a relationship first with Dash Digital Cash as a sponsor, a crypto sponsor, and then eventually with Smart Cash as a crypto sponsor. So both of those cryptocurrencies have supported our work as independent media. And what began to happen over the course of that year, so myself and my team, Sam Eaton, who's in here, Zach Carter, who's in here, we have envisioned for a long time this idea of building an independent media network, but have never been able to really realize what that could be until we were introduced to these relationships with cryptocurrencies. And what we realized was that there was an incredible synergy between the crypto world and the independent media world. That there's fighting that goes on in the crypto world, right? But I would lean, if we're going to pick sides, I would lean into the decentralized model of crypto, right? To more of that decentralized space. Because I think that's where media needs to be. Media needs to be decentralized, not to be owned by 6 major corporations in the United States. There needs to be more freedom, more voices, more debate, more discussion. And I see that happening within the crypto world, within the crypto space. And so we had already envisioned this, and then we began to realize there is something to this. There's something more that needs to be happening. So here's the problem that came up this year. While we were envisioning and making plans to say, how can we build a crypto-based, blockchain-based independent media organization, all of a sudden, in the middle of last year, in the middle of 2018, big tech companies and media entities made the case for us. They demonstrated why there has to be a shift, a change in this space. Independent media, as you may or may not know, I would think you would know, is being purged from basically all social media platforms. Facebook, getting rid of everybody who is not establishment. Twitter, YouTube. Some people say, oh, conservatives are being censored. Yes, some conservatives are, but it's not a conservative versus liberal thing. It's not a left versus right thing. Get that out of your mind. It is an establishment versus dissension purge that's going on. If you are establishment media, left or right, you are safe. If you are anybody on the left or the right or in between, if you're a libertarian, if you're an anti-war activist, if you're in the Green Party, if you believe in debating vaccines, if you are anybody who is not establishment in a media space, you have no home right now. So Facebook is purging them. Twitter has been shadow banning content creators for years. YouTube deletes channels without warning at all. And meanwhile, of course, as I mentioned, mainstream media owned by about six companies that control 90% of all media in the United States. Then another thing happened at the end of last year. It went beyond just the big tech companies saying, let's remove those voices, but then the platforms where funding comes from. Right, so PayPal, Patreon, Google Ads begins deplatforming any independent journalists or voices that they disagree with. And so they begin removing them from their sites as well. And then didn't even have time to get this into the presentation. Last week, Facebook made an announcement. I don't know how many of you saw this. They're going to, because they're such good people at Facebook, they're going to give $300 million to local TV stations to create content and to train journalists. Listen, local media hasn't exactly been a bastion of great journalism for a long time. But if you want to take something that's bad now and make it absolutely worse on every level, allow Facebook to run local newsrooms, because that is now the next step in this process. There is an illusion of a free marketplace for ideas and debate in American and global media, when in fact, powerful platforms are deciding which thoughts, ideas, and messages that you as the public are allowed to hear, to discuss, and to debate. That is what is happening. So what's the answer to it? Because the establishment isn't waging a war of ideas. Right now, they're waging a war against ideas. So here's our answer. Isegoria, or Ice Media, is a blockchain-based 24-hour streaming over-the-top player for news and entertainment. Essentially, what we are working to create is a place where independent media can come together, can become connected, can have an actual platform where they can speak freely, and the market decides which voices are heard and which are not. And you know how you censor that? You know how you control stuff you don't want to hear? By you, as an individual, choosing to not listen to things that you disagree with. Now, we want to encourage debate and encourage ideas and encourage discussion, because we believe that change happens, if you want to forge change, through the open marketplace of ideas, not a controlled and censored space. We're going to skip ahead here. So what have we done? Well, over the past 20 years, we know that cable news has become increasingly polarized. The largest cable networks in America today really only have a few million viewers each day, and yet they're considered incredibly successful. They are incredibly successful, no question about it. But today, there is a similar market gap among independent, libertarian, free-thinking Americans, people who just want to be able to hear something other than the corporate line that is being fed to them. So ICE Media, or Isegoria, it's a larger platform than a cable or streaming channel. We would also compete with Facebook's newsfeed and YouTube's channel system, where that purge is underway. So here's how it works. We have 3 tiers in our system. ICE Live, which is a 24/7 program stream channel that we're going to build out. ICE Quality, which is a platform for independent channels, similar to what YouTube does. So all these guys who are being kicked off of platforms like YouTube will be able to bring their own content to their own channel, and they'll be able to house it there. They'll be able to raise money on their own, and they'll be able to make money on their own. But we also realize, having been in this crypto space, that there is a huge lack of funding available to independent media. It's so difficult as an independent journalist to be able to make the money to create content. And so one of the things we want to create is an indie channel where we help that process to happen for journalists. We will be available through streaming players, mobile, and website. And we'll create a live original content, newscasts, docudrama, and independent content. But here is, as I skip ahead, the most important part, I think, of what we're doing, which is to create a decentralized treasury system within our media channel. This is what makes us so different than a lot of the other ideas that have been created. We're not looking to simply say we're going to program out a series of channels. We're saying what we want to do is also set up a treasury system similar to what we've worked with Dash, Digital Cash, and with Smart Cash. A treasury system where our community has the ability to be able to vote on projects and have content creators make requests for funding for the work that they're doing. Because we know that Google has cut off all the advertising revenue that's going to those independent creators. We understand that Patreon is cutting off all the funding that directly comes from subscribers to independent creators. So we want to create a system where they can actually be funded, again, through that crypto system. And it allows the community to have a say in content that's created. Not to have veto power over it, but to be able to say, this is content that we are interested in and we want to see made, which makes us really, truly the first responsive media company. This has become a transformational moment in our generation. You know, George Orwell once said this. He said, freedom is the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. I would submit to you today that freedom is fast disappearing in this country. Isegoria will not build another media echo chamber, but instead will build a community-based ecosystem where news and information will be discussed, debated, and presented from thousands of points of view. Because we believe that more ideas and more thoughts and more facts and more debate makes all of us stronger. I'll be around the conference today as well as my team. Thank you guys very much.
Hey, Nick, you're on. Sorry. All right, thank you.